Well, this morning I'm heading out to do some planting. It's early November and I haven't made a video for some time. The last video I made, I said I planned to get back soon with a few videos, and that didn't happen. Part of that reason is weather. October weather here has been rather wet and windy. And really hasn't been ideal for doing the gardening that I expected to do. The next couple of weeks are still expected to be fairly wet. Today I may get a shower. I'm going to be dodging that hopefully and trying to get my outdoor tomatoes into the ground, and also get some pumpkins planted, possibly some corn seed and maybe more. All depends on what the weather actually allows. But first, let's have a quick look at what's currently growing in the garden. Now, you will recall this patch, which I have made a couple of videos about when I was planting. The garlic you'll see here is looking probably some of the best garlic that I've ever grown. The largest stuff, of course, is the elephant. The true garlic is this row back in here, but it's all looking very healthy, and the use of the straw has controlled the weeds. There's one or two, but most of the weeds have been suppressed. So that is looking really good. We're probably only about a month away from harvesting this true garlic, and then about 2 months from the harvesting the elephant garlic. The broad beans are just beginning to flower. Now, this first row here, I did have some trouble with well, slugs, snails, something along that line. Didn't visually see it, but had to use some snail bait on it. They've been attacked. I think they've probably been hiding here in the straw and come out because the problem seemed to go this way from this direction. That row down the bottom is looking the healthiest and had the least attack. But they're underway and that's good. Down in the corner here, the early potatoes are really getting going. As you can see, I've been through and hilled them. There's a little bit of weed around that will need to be taken care of at some point. The bed in between here is still empty. It's had weed in it. I will probably come and clean that up and plant in it in the next week or so as time allowed, but it's not on the schedule for today. Coming here into the greenhouse, you can see the tomatoes that I planted early really getting underway and really starting to take off. Now, if you recall, I had dug holes and put chook manure in, and what I didn't do when I actually did that was to mark the center of the hole, which is where I would have preferred to plant the tomato. I tried but didn't remember entirely, so I'm a little bit off center in some of my plantings. This one here is probably a good example. The hole's right down here, the tomatoes on the side. I would have preferred them in the center because that way I could have just filled back with a little more compost around and got more root growth basically off the stem. Anyway, it is what it is. I have put a string to grow them up, and I will probably try and grow a lateral off each side and second and third strings on each plant and see how that goes in this case. You'll see here on this tomato the laterals are coming fairly well advanced. I've pruned most of the others out. There's a little pruning needed up here, I see. You have to be on them every few days to keep them trimmed. In this bed I have some cucumbers. Now, I originally put seed in, but the seed didn't succeed. It wasn't good seed, so I ended up going and getting, or Elizabeth actually got the plants and put them in, and they're just starting to grow. They're not really looking that happy yet, but there's growth beginning, so from now on it should start to take over and hopefully get some cucumbers from it. The broccoli has been harvested and there's not a lot of secondary growth coming. A couple here that need to be harvested, but not much else is going to go on there. I planted the capsicum seedlings that I had grown from seed here into this bed a couple of days ago when it was raining outside, so I came in here and put these in. Now you'll see this lettuce growing here as well. This is self-sown. It's basically a salad box variety. I've been growing it for many years, but I never actually plant it. I just simply allow it to seed. I let one or two go to seed and it comes up wherever. So I'm dodging around it a little bit. Some of this will get pulled out as it gets older, as time goes on, and I'll probably allow something like in this corner, maybe this one, to come up to seed and reseed for next season. Now beside me you'll see Elizabeth's got some dill growing, and it's getting pretty big. There's a few other herbs in this bed that she has, and it's getting a bit wild in there. She is intending to plant into this bed today some basil, so we might see that happen on the film later. But the major mission of the day is to get out these little tomato plants. Now, as you can see, they have been in their little pots too long, so they're not looking overly happy. They really need to get out into the ground and start their major growing season. Now, of course, it's springtime and it's full flower season. As I'm going past, you'll see the clematis here, how nice it is. The strawberries, we should stop with the strawberries as we're going by. I replanted these strawberry beds in early September, and they're now beginning to flower. Most of these that I planted have done fairly well, so we hope to see some strawberries out of this again. This year I did something a little bit different. I've used some pine bark in as the mulch with some newspaper underneath it. I have had some weed problems in these beds, surprisingly. The seeds still blow in and come up, so I'm hoping that's going to control it and stop that weed problem. So we'll see how it goes as the year develops. In the raised beds here, there's a real mix. There is plants from last season which are heading up to seed, and we can still use some of that in terms of the silver beet and so on. However, most of that needs to be cleared out. There's new plants coming up here that have come from seed. Now, my carrots didn't do very well this year, so I had to reseed, so I'm behind on carrots. I have planted the beans, the climbing bean seed. You'll see some lettuce in there. This bed still needs to be cleaned up. I did start doing that, but it needs to be totally cleaned out for planting. I do have down here zucchini seed that has actually now just coming through. Now you'll see I've put that in pots with the bottoms cut out just to protect them from any snail or slug attack, because there's a little bit of that around with this wet weather. Behind me here, the snow peas are getting underway. They're almost ready for the first pick. So really happy about that. There's some spring onions, some spinach. On my left, this section is going to be the main potato crop. It's still under the plastic, as you can see. I'll get into that hopefully in the next couple of weeks. It needs to be prepared and planted. Heading past the peach trees here, you'll notice that there is a really good crop of peaches set this year, or setting. There'll still be probably a little bit of natural thinning occur. There's a little bit of curly leaf, but it's not too bad, and yeah, it looks like a good peach season. The apples are just finishing flower, starting to really get an idea of what's going to be there. I think the apple crop is going to be good too. Of course, as I said, springtime, Elizabeth's flower garden is looking really nice. Worth having a little bit of a closer look in here. The wisteria is just coming into full flower. Looks really pretty, and of course behind that the clematis wall is in full flower. So really nice in springtime and really enjoyable. Now it's in this section that I'm actually going to plant today the tomatoes and also the corn. Over winter I had oats growing in here as a green manure crop. A couple of weeks ago I got Samuel to come in with the ride-on and mow it down, and then about a week ago I came and rotary hoed that into the ground. It was pretty hard to rotary hoe because the root mass was pretty hard to penetrate, particularly with the light machine I have. So I ended up doing about 3 passes over here to actually get some good cultivation. The tomatoes I'm going to plant down the lower side, which is the richer soil and will get the best water. The corn in the middle, and then something else will go up the top. We see how that goes. While chasing up tools and equipment, I've noticed something here on the ground that we don't see every day, and that's a yellow flatworm. They occur in Tasmania and Victoria, and we see them mostly probably springtime when the things are moist. I'll see if I can get a close-up for you. So here's that. I'm not sure at what level this will film and where it will blur. Give you a size, you can sort of see it's not quite as about a finger length, and quite a bright yellow. Moves very slowly. When you first see them you think they're not moving at all, but they are very slowly moving. And really you can't, apart from the fact that they have a direction of movement, you wouldn't know the head from the tail. So having collected the few things that I need, my first step is to run out some weed mat. Now I realise this is fairly controversial to use a weed mat like this. The last season I used weed mat with my tomatoes, and I found it by far the easiest setup and best weed control that I had had. It was very easy when it came to picking tomatoes. I could use newspaper and mulch to do this, but the labour involved and resources involved is also quite considerable. I have better quality weed mat here which has better UV resistance, and because of that I'm hoping to get multiple seasons out of this, so it's not just a one-use throwaway product. So with the weed mat in place, I've laid out the concrete mesh that I use as a climbing frame. I've got 5 pieces along here. May not be quite enough for all my tomato plants, but we'll see how we go. I then put in tomato stakes. I use, it's basically, I overlap these frames a little bit, and that way you use a lot less tomato stakes to hold it than you would. So it's basically 3 per frame, but that's overlapping to the next one. Reused the tyre wire, which was great. Now with all that in place, I have begun digging to holes for the tomato plants. Now I'm digging quite large holes here because what I'm going to do is actually fill those holes with compost and blood and bone, and then just cover them before I plant the plants into the top. You'll notice at the bottom of these holes that there is the orange clay. Now it's pretty heavy, so what I'm going to do is get the post hole shovel and just break that a little bit, open it up so it will actually drain properly, or hopefully at least better. Now Elizabeth's come and told me she's ready to put the basil into the greenhouse, so I'm going to go and give her a hand and get some compost for her, and we'll see what's happening there. So Elizabeth's weeded this bed, and I'm just going to add a little bit of blood and bone to it. Scratch that in. Give the basil that's going in here a bit more of a burst. You can scratch it in. Yep. Oh.
because it'll the root system a bit more in there. I'll have to dry it out in the summertime. Hello, you haven't seen me for a while. I'm Elizabeth, and I every year plant basil in this garden or other herbs, but this year I thought I would make the basil happen again. So I've got sweet basil and Greek basil. I've never grown Greek basil before, so I thought I'd give it a try. It does taste slightly different, and so I'm going to put that out in here. I did originally start growing them in the house in a sunroom where it's a little bit more stable temperature. And they were from little plants that I bought, but I just thought I would make them a little bit bigger before I put them in the ground. So I will try to fit as much as I can in here. I know they do grow quite big. So I will start with the sweet basil. We'll put that on this side. Sort of zigzag them, I think might be good, because I've got to fit those in as well. And the ones in the middle are not doing so well. So I might put them in last, see if I bother. And these ones haven't, I don't know what went wrong there, got too wet or just not strong plant. So now that I've laid them out to where I think I'll put them, I'll now put them in. So lots of cooking salads and pesto, yum. So on this side I've got Greek basil, and I'm going to put that in this side. Like I said before, I've never grown this variety before. Would have liked them to be a little bit bigger. Hopefully the slugs don't attack them. And we have a watering system always up the middle, so
yeah, not bad to lay the watering system out first and then
I took it off before. I forgot to put the water system out first, because then I remember where I meant to put everything. Like, it gives me a guide. So now it's a bit tricky to get it to lay out. Whoopsie, I'm already killing things on the way. And I think that went underneath, did it, John?
Oh, I don't remember.
Now I've made it awkward for myself. So we'll go and we'll plug it in, because I need to water it in a minute. And now I've got to work out what I've done wrong. Sort of go a little bit back there. There we go. Maybe not so bad. And then this plant can take over too, so I've got to sort of think about it all.
Some space up at the end here, we could probably fit something in.
And one last one, and then I'll pop them in the ground. So I'm happy with that, and now we'll see how it all grows well.
How do you stop the basil going to seed?
Well, I just find if I keep harvesting and harvesting really regularly, then it keeps growing long enough, and then you just basically don't let it grow big. Just keep picking the leaves, and it shouldn't go to seed if you don't want that to happen. And I have to say, I have tried to grow some of the basil this year from seeds. They were from last year. They didn't work. Okay, 2 years ago I planted holy basil, also known as tulsi, and I grew 2 plants in the ground, and they didn't do well, and so I had one die, and this one I managed to keep alive. Yes, it's not looking very good anymore. So it does taste nice, tastes very different to all the other basils, but it is one that lasts many years. So my question to all of you are, if anyone lives in a cold climate and has tried to grow it and has had success, please tell me, and how did you go about it? Because it's time for me to work out how to get it to grow again, a new plant. I had tried to grow it from seed from these, but I haven't had any success.
Well, I've had the camera on charge for a little while, and in the meantime I've been and filled these holes with compost, and as you can see, a little bit of blood and bone on top, and I'm mixing a little bit of the native soil into that, so it's a blend and not the pure compost, and then a little bit on top. That's what I will plant into. I'm marking it with an open spot as I go, so I know where it is. this is the last one. It's taken a while to do this. Started reasonably early, 9 o'clock or something this morning. It's now 12, so it's taken, among other things, a few hours to get this all organised. Preparation work is time consuming, but pays off in the end. Well, I'm finally up to the fun part, which is getting these plants in. I have here the Amish paste and the Romas, all which I grew from seed myself. They will fill the bulk of this. Now, the Amish paste, as you see, are fairly leggy, so that means I can put them nice and deep into the ground. That means I'll get a good root system. They are an indeterminate, so I'm going to have to trim the tops of these because my trellis is not that high. These are determinate, the Romas, and these will be the bulk of the sauce tomatoes that I grow. So I'm starting this from this far end with the Romas, and because I've dug that, it's really nice and easy to get a hole. You can see the roots are nicely developed. They're ready to go out indeed. So I'm working now with the Amish paste, and with any tall leggy tomato plant, plant them as deep as you can. If you can't go deep like this, then lay them down. And that way you'll get a better root system and they won't get blown around by the wind when they're young. But with these holes I can go nice and deep. Being deep means that the root system is going to be better in terms of moisture. These have been leggy from the very beginning. As soon as they germinated, they wanted to go really tall. Well, I've got 3 places left here after the Romas, the Amish paste. I have 3 plants here which are legend, so I'll pop these in here. The Sindel, the Brandywine are going to have to go somewhere else in the garden. I want to keep this to one straight row. I do have 1 frame left which I could use, but I'd rather just keep my rows straight along here. It's just a lot simpler. So another location for the other plants, but probably not today. I'll probably have too many tomatoes, but well, can you really ever have too many tomatoes? So that's the last tomato in. What I'm going to do now is I'll give these a quick water just to settle the plants. It's going to get plenty of rain overnight, so I don't have to worry too much, but just a settling water. I'll put a little bit of compost around each plant and then run another run of the weed mat along this side. Then I'll fill in these gaps with some newspaper and straw around the actual plants. So plenty of mulch really around the plants that will actually keep them growing well and keep them moist. So with the tomatoes all mulched up and ready and set for the season, I ran 3 rows in with the wheel hoe to put sweet corn in. I've added just a little bit of sprinkling of blood and bone to those rows and then dropped the seed in. And of course covered it back also with the wheel hoe. At that stage of the day I was under a little bit of threat of rain. It was like it might begin to drizzle, so I was rushing a little bit in that process. However, that's backed off, so I've still got half an hour or so of good time. So I'm going to try and put in the last crop into this bed, which is some watermelons. The watermelon is going to go into this top row. I'm going to actually shape those a little bit each spot where the melons are going to try and catch the water, because this top section of the bed is the dry section. Watermelon's a little bit of a play crop for us because they come quite late in the season, and really by that stage most people would say they don't really want to eat watermelon. However, my son Samuel will eat watermelon in winter quite happily, so it really doesn't matter. Now I've got three lots of seed here. I've got some sugar baby. Now I have grown sugar baby before, but not for a while. It didn't do so well the last time I grew it, but I'm going to have another go. Maybe it'll do better this time. I've got Klondike, which I grew the last couple of years, and it produces a small but quite tasty and juicy melon. So this seed I have kept myself from the last year. And finally I've got some Cream of Saskatchewan, which is a yellow flesh, a very soft and juicy watermelon. It grows, but I haven't really had success in producing reasonable quantities of it. It's always fairly low. This seed I've kept myself from the last time again, so we'll see how we go. We just got to try. Into each of these I'm going to sprinkle some blood and bone, and then come back and put a fair bit of compost into them. This compost was steaming when I dug it out, and it's still warm enough inside there for me to feel through my gloves. I don't think it would damage my seeds, but I'm just going to wet it down to be sure. The alternative would be to go and leave it for an hour and let it cool naturally, but it won't hurt to have this bit of water anyway. And I'm ready to plant, so I'm going to start with the Cream of Saskatchewan. I've got basically do three lots of each. I'm using plenty of seed because I have it with this. When you keep your own, you can always plant plenty. But really, I only want to grow probably one vine per mound here. So this is way more seed than should be needed, assuming it all germinates. Next up, I'm going with Sugar Baby. A nice, grey seed. Smaller melons usually are better in cooler climates because they're generally faster to achieve what you want. And the final one I'm putting in is Klondike. It's a really lovely juicy melon, Klondike, so it's like having a drink of sweet water. And cover those back, we're done. Well, that's it for today's video. Got a good start on this planting, nice dirty hand too, and still got a few things to plant though. I still have to get in the pumpkins, the early potatoes, and also the remaining tomato plants that I've got. So that's going to happen, well, maybe this week, but it all depends on weather. Predicted weather this week is rain most days, but some of that might happen at the nights and we might get a chance to do some gardening. Anyway, thanks for watching. I hope this has been of interest, and all the best with your spring garden.